we're almost victim of our own success because we've been growing so well in the UK, and then we launched in other countries, and then you start to have.
Luisa, welcome back to Insurtech Insights. How have you found it today so far? How was your keynote?
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's always good to be back, so I think the keynote was very interesting. It's an opportunity for me to speak about the industry. This time I took more of an industry angle as opposed to just talking about ManyPets. They really love being back, and it's an opportunity to connect with a lot of different people all in one place. Very efficient, and I think this year in particular, because of so much is changing, every week, every month. It's been really interesting to go and see some of the talks and see what people are actually doing.
You covered a lot of key trends in your keynote this morning, so we'll dive into a few of those in a bit more detail.
Yeah.
But first of all, give us the bottom line up front. It was a very good year for ManyPets. You've done lots of exciting things, and the results are there to show for that. In a few words, what has impacted those results the most? What has impacted operations and delivery the most?
Yeah. So it has been a really good year this year. I think we have really built on the changes and the work that we've done in the previous year, with very strong foundations of underwriting and operations. And now we're really, we've really invested more into growth and the proposition, and how do we bring all of that to our customers. And we've actually seen that, happening in a very positive way. One of the things that I talked about in my keynote, it's the only point where I actually had a ManyPets example, is seeing the cost of our cost per claim going down, while our Trustpilot score has been going up. To me, that's really the outcome of the investment that we have made in the technology. So we're not just making the investment, we're really seeing the impact on faster claims, and better outcome for customers, and at the same time a reduced cost of claim for us. So that's really that win-win position, which is exciting and has been the fuel of growth.
Sounds like a customer and a ManyPets utopia, that both of those numbers are moving in the right direction at the same time. Currently, I think more than half of claims are no human touch. What is the roadmap to get to 100? What is the likelihood we can get to 100? And why has customer experience or trust increased so dramatically?
Yeah. So talking about your first question first, we have. So the moment we're doing a little bit more than half of the claims completely automated. We'll probably never want to get to 100%, partly because you always want to have a control group to make sure that you're paying the right claims, you're checking against a human experience. But also we're very cautious about which type of claims do we automate, and there are certain claims that are more complex and also more emotional. So for example, when a pet dies, where people particularly want to talk to a human as opposed to just get everything automated. So we're thoughtful about where to apply that automation to get the best experience for the customers, but also the right outcome for us. If we get it wrong on a small claim, it's not a big cost. If we get it wrong on a big claim, that's clearly more of an issue because you're overpaying.
I suppose that leads nicely into the point you made earlier on retention. So claims is one big component in customer loyalty and retention. What is the other? And what else can you foresee being a big driver in the next few years?
Yeah, and so we talked about claims in particular, and claims I think is really at the heart of pet insurance operations, because pet is a high claims frequency category, so you do have that interaction with the customer at the point of claim. But we apply it in general to the customer experience. I know people may want to call us because they're changing their address, or because they're not sure they have the right level of cover, they want to consider other options. So for us, it's really being there for customers and providing the best support. Clearly, we're more of a digital player, so we try to support customers to do it in a digital way, but having the right human support around it if it's needed. So I think that I would cluster all of that in the camp of a great service to the customers, which is a big part of the choice of renewing. The other half of it is pricing. So we are spending quite a lot of attention making sure that we have the right pricing at the renewals. Clearly trying to understand what's the risk of that pet and the information that we know about the pet per se, but also thinking about the lifetime of the pet. So we're not we've never really looked at buying customers cheap and then increasing prices over time. Now, prices do increase over time because the pet becomes older, because vet inflation is increasing, etc. But we're really trying to price over that relationship, longer relationship, so that people don't have a shock of having dramatically different prices at the point of renewal, and that's an important component of that retention.
Is there also an element of prevention and pet wellness? How is the broader non-insurance product set evolving? And what else can we do on prevention and whole of life health?
Yeah, so I think there is a really important element of prevention, and as the cost of the kind of vet treatments, if you want, is becoming more and more expensive, I think there is a more important role that prevention can play to bring the overall cost of providing that health service to the pet more affordable for people. And again, that's an area where the use of technology can really help, because we do have a lot of data, and it is possible to use that data to provide the right information to customers so that they can better navigate their choices. They can better understand, why certain things are happening, and then decide whether they need to go to see a vet, or actually that's no need. You can just take some small steps, and things will be fine. So really, it's a question of helping people understand their choices, understand what is happening through the use of by surfacing, if you want, our data. But also then helping them to kind of use the technology to have access to the right advice at the right time.
I suppose this is where having a strong partnership network helps, being able not just to understand what's happening to the pets or the customer, but being able to suggest and enable a next step. So is there kind of a network scale effect, and is this why you also mention that the market is consolidating a bit, and that we might end up with fewer more important players?
Yeah, I don't think the market is yet consolidating. That's one of my predictions for the future in terms of what we may see. I do have a strong view that scale is increasingly becoming more important, and it's actually quite difficult to compete in an environment where the bar is rising for everyone, which is a good thing. But if you're a smaller player without data, without necessarily a significant budget on innovation, it's just harder to compete in this market. So I think the scale is really an important factor to make sure that the right investments are deployed, and therefore you get a better outcome.
Have there been any scaling pains, or has it been steady, controlled growth, slowly but surely, or maybe quickly and surely, enabled by technology? What are some of the scaling challenges?
Yeah, so we have gone through scaling pains, absolutely. Probably less in the last couple of years. We had experienced those pains as we were growing in the past. And maybe part of the pains is we're almost victim of our own success, because we've been growing so well in the UK, and then we launched in other countries. And then you start to have like a very complex organization trying to do a lot of different things. So I think that was part of the challenge of you're kind of building on the success, but then at some point, you're adding complexity, and that complexity kind of slows down the success. So we, as an organization, well, now more than 2 years ago, we had made the decision of exiting some of the international markets, focusing on the UK, where we have a significant scale and significant business, turning the UK to profitability, continuing to invest and expand the proposition in the UK. And now we're at a point where, we're profitable, we're generating cash, we're continuing to grow in a more controlled way, with those kind of solid foundations in place. And we may get to a point where we're now, we may expand and do other things, but from a position of a very solid core business in the UK, as opposed to trying to still work on too many things at once.
That's good. I guess brings us nicely onto the next thing I wanted to ask you. AI very useful in making sense of complexity across business units, across workflows. You mentioned earlier distribution. We've spoken about pricing, we've spoken about claims. Talk to me about the future of distribution. New channels, maybe ChatGPT and Claude aggregation. How is it impacting pets and insurance now, and how might it in the next few years?
So I think at the moment people are increasingly using the LLM engines to do research. So we've definitely seen still a relatively small proportion, but it's growing exponentially even over the past few months. At the moment it's mostly used for research. So people saying, well, looking to, is pet insurance worth it? Should I even have it? And what are the key features that are important to have? So really to build their own understanding and simplify that complexity. I think at the moment, what you can't do is getting a price. So comparing the quotes all in one place in a very kind of simple way, throughout the chat. Now, clearly we have the ChatGPT apps that are popping up. It's still a little bit of a clunky process because you need to call the apps, give access, and call the different apps, etc. I'm pretty sure that over the next few months, the process will become a lot smoother. And therefore, people are going to start using it more. And then I also think that, from the distribution side, the AI assistants, are going to gradually expand into the life cycle of the policy. So you can easily see people using AI assistants say, well, I'm changing address, change all my address on all my policies, right? So to kind of do the admin task at the moment, people are still doing manually, or sometimes are even forgetting to do because they're changing their address and they forget to tell their insurers they have actually changed their address. Or submit a claim, right? Now here's the invoice, submit a claim for me. So I think there is going to be more and more of the kind of the life cycle of the product that is going to be handled by AI, and companies really should make they need to think about both the distribution but also the operating model to ensure that the right information can be surfaced to the AI assistant in the right way. So I talked about going from a API first infrastructure to a MCP first infrastructure, and that's the thing that we're working on right now.
So we've spoken lots about automating claims, AI in distribution, better pricing. One of the big themes here this year at Insurtech Insights Europe is agentic AI, but agentic teams, agents working together to automate not just one chunk of the life cycle or the workflow, but maybe the entire customer and all its interactions with ManyPets. What is the likelihood what is the roadmap there? What is the likelihood you might never have to have a human in the loop for 50 to 90% of customers?
I think it's quite likely that things will dramatically change in the future. We are getting ready for that across all the different functions. We already have like I think you mentioned that orchestration of moving from a very narrow application to having the agents are actually talking to each other and addressing different things. We already have it in the claims automation, for example, because you cannot get to that level of automation just by doing one thing. We have Millie, our AI agent, is a family of 5 different agents, or like families of agents, if you want, each doing one thing but talking to each other. So you might check, if there is a duplicate claim, go into the policy administration system and check if the details are matching, and then connecting with each other and talking to each other. So I think that is the future of the automation, which is why it's really important to have that overall infrastructure right, because you need to have access to the right tools. And the right data behind it. And I think there will be an evolution of the tools as well, because the moment every piece of technology will have an AI element, right? You're using team, and it has an AI element. You're using different systems. Each one has a little view, and we really need to move from that narrow view of one tool looking at AI in one way to a company-wide view where you're really orchestrating things and exposing the information cross-function, which is a really interesting challenge. And then I think there is the element of how do you then bring the organization along to that change, because the roles were already changing quite a lot in terms of how the teams are structured, the roles that they perform in the team, because that's, the individual roles are blending a bit, and I think roles will become broader with a lot more flexibility on how people are interacting together.
I was going to ask you, what are we going to do when the agents are running everything? And how can you give me one example of an org shift change, or a significant change in the role of the underwriting or the claims team, for example? And have those been for the better? Are we focusing on more interesting work now?
Yeah, so I am very positive about the future. You clearly read articles every day that say they were all doomed, like none of our jobs will exist in the future. I don't think so. So we've seen it in a number of different transformations in the past, and revolutions, when the internet came along, and everyone was had to figure out what to do. I think this is just the same transition on steroids in terms of the speed at which things are happening. So jobs will evolve. We will be doing different things. The way we're interacting will change. I think from an organizational point of view, and especially from my perspective as CEO of an organization, it's really a question of how do you, because of the speed at which the changes are happening, how do you move the organization fast enough to make sure that you can keep up with the pace and not leaving people behind? Because in the past, I think those changes were happening in a more gradual way, so people had the time to adjust and evolve. Right now, the speed is exciting from one side, but it's also a challenge to manage from a people management perspective.
I could talk to you as always for hours, Luisa, but we need to make way for the next interview. So I'll thank you there. Best of luck for the rest of 2026. I can't wait for the next one in 27, see how much the agents are doing and what the humans are doing now. Best of luck, and thanks for coming once again.
Thank you very much for having me.